Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. I actually said it tonight, John.
Yes, you did. Well done. Are you going to introduce the show?
Would you like me to introduce the show?
If you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, wherever you are, please be advised there will be conspiracies abound tonight as we go once again down the rabbit hole with our guest, Ed the Techie. Good evening, Ed.
Hello, guys. Hello, audience. How's everyone doing this evening?
You know how it is.
And guess what we're talking about tonight? It's UFOs.
Yeah, it makes a nice change from all of the stuff about the health and all of the stuff about the bloody Ukrainians and all the Russians and all this other nonsense.
Indeed, it's a bit of a light-hearted, conspiracy-filled show, and like I said, hopefully conspiracies are abound, because I know you've got a set of slides for us, you've got a presentation for us, and we're just going to go through it all one by one and down the rabbit hole, as they say, aren't we, Ed?
Yes, well, that was the plan. I mean, the one that we did on 9/11, I didn't really structure it well enough, apart from having a folder full of pictures and having to flip through them. So I thought to myself after the end of that one that I'll try and be a bit more organized for the next one. So yeah, I've just done a deck of slides, and I'll put a link to the slides up on codshit.com, which is my website, and I'll do that after the show so that people can take a look. It's mainly just pictures. It was more to sort of give a visual reference and a guide to the conversation and stuff like that. So yeah,
before we go down the rabbit hole, how was your trip?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, well the Netherlands, it was fun. I mean, I didn't really notice anything about farmers protests or food shortages or anything like that. But the farmers, the places that they were protesting weren't really anywhere near where I was, and my mum lives pretty much in the heart of sort of central southern Holland farming community. And her supermarket also wasn't one of the ones that was heavily blockaded. But the Dutch government, they're like the English government. They're doing their best to ignore them, and the Dutch media basically doesn't cover them. And when it does cover them, they're described as kind of right-wing extremists, not quite anti-vaxxers, but right-wing extremists.
Yeah, but isn't anyone that protests any prevailing narrative these days just labelled as right-wing extremists, Ed?
Yeah, right-wing extremists, conspiracy theorists.
I mean, pretty much all of us sitting here, except maybe John, we're pretty lefty, left of centre, I would imagine. But, we don't agree with a narrative.
Do you think it really matters these days?
No.
Because I think that that thing that I drew, that meme, one of the two memes I've ever done. Remember when I drew the big circle that doesn't quite join at the top, but put the guy on the left at the top and the guy on the right at the other side on the top, because that's where we are.
Yeah,
it
really is two cheeks of the same buttock.
It is.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin. Always has been. It's a distraction. And they have to distract us, and they have to keep the normies afraid. So they'll kind of ease off it on a bit, and then they'll just pick some random shit like a couple of warm days, and use that to go out of their way to absolutely scare the living shit out of everyone.
I mean, it was hot, right? Let's face it, it was hot, but then it's been hot here before.
It was hot. Yeah,
it was hot, but we got through it, right? We got through it. And do
you remember like in about 90, it was maybe 99 or 2000 or something, it was like -20 during the winter
I spent the millennium in Florida, so
for about 2 weeks it was like -20.
If it was that here, I escaped it, but that was actually when, John, I was just telling you, it could have been either last night or today, actually, about when I flew Laker out to Orlando and we had to stop in Scotland.
That was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, but that's when I told you about that. That was that holiday, and yes, there was snow everywhere, but we got off to Florida, so
yeah. But is that when people used to behave sensibly and not go, "Ooh, ooh, we can't go anywhere, the snow."
I love snow. I absolutely love it.
Or we can't fly planes in and out of here. The tarmac's a bit soft.
But they want any excuse to lock everybody down. That's the thing. It's all tying into this climate narrative, and pretty soon climate change denial will be the next thing that.
It's already.
It's already a kind of a sneer, and it's something they use to dismiss you. But wait until they start getting more serious about it, because the climate that's their kind of agenda, and it's all nonsense. The only thing that they can do is censor the shit out of anybody who disagrees with them.
And believe me, the three of us sitting here, all banned from Twitter for seemingly no reason, we know what being a victim of that censorship is like.
It's absurd.
One more thing I actually want to say before we go down the rabbit hole, John, and that's with regards to Sri Lanka, right? So we talked last night about the...
them electing their prime minister as the new president, the one that I hated.
So now, since the new president has come into power, if Sri Lankans want fuel, they have to go to the petrol station, scan a QR code, and get an allowance.
There you go.
I saw that on the news.
Yep.
It's craziness, absolute craziness, and they're training kids. There was a story of a kid I can't remember where it was, but basically she wasn't able to go to the school prom because she didn't have enough points, like behavior points or whatever. And they're just training the kids up to do the social credit score.
That in China?
No, it was I think it was either the UK or the US.
Huh?
Yeah, no, I'll try and dig the story up. It was just something that flashed across one of my feeds earlier on today.
I'd need to see that. I'd need to get verification of that one.
Yeah, no, I can find. I'm pretty sure it'd be easy to verify with a quick Google search.
And just
surprise me.
One more piece of housekeeping. Next Thursday, we will be doing Chasing Descent After Dark, not on YouTube. It will be on brand YouTube and Twitch only. Maybe Facebook. We don't really know yet, because Facebook probably won't like what we have to say either. Because our guest will be Dr. David Cartland, NHS doctor who has been also censored, banned, trolled, harassed. He was suspended from his job and has won all of his tribunals and been reinstated and is now working once again, also within the NHS. So he will be on our show to talk all of that next Thursday. Be sure you are subscribed on the alternative platforms or you will not get that show.
Be sure you are subscribed on the alternative platforms or you will be censored and silenced.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'd say just slap yourself in the face, because what the hell are you still doing on YouTube?
Well, we like spreading ourselves about and being as accessible to the widest audience as possible. I mean, we're on YouTube right now, and shows like this should be fine, right? I hope so. Anyway.
YouTube.
Oh, there's no. I can't. I mean, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut as far as anything seriously controversial or bannable goes on. This is literally just something that I've always been interested in forever, since the year dot, basically.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Right, okay. YouTube's a good platform. I mean,
YouTube is a great platform in terms of tech.
Yeah,
but the censorship and policies is just. I just think people, if there's an alternative, people should try and use it and just not give YouTube the viewership.
The problem with the alternatives is that they're still very much in their infancy. And
that's true.
In a lot of cases, not very reliable.
Also true. Yeah, that is true. I have all sorts of problems using Chromecast with the others. YouTube will Chromecast stuff without a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Google. Yeah.
Because, I mean, YouTube's owned by Google still, isn't it?
Stuart, my new laptop. Let's talk about my new laptop for a minute. John, what's going on with my new laptop? You think DPD might have lifted it, right?
My suspicion is DPD have got a vendetta against you because they stole your phone.
Yes.
And it looks like they've stolen your laptop.
They did steal my phone earlier this year. I waited 3 days for a replacement, but hopefully they're saying it will arrive tomorrow. I've had them on live chat, I've had them on the phone. and we will see. Is basically what, and if not, I'll get straight back in contact with the people that sold it to me and say you're going to have to send me another one. It's as simple as that.
On the bright side, it wasn't Hermes.
Oh, Hermes don't exist anymore. Didn't they rebrand themselves to Every because they were so bad?
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so Hermes don't even exist as a brand anymore. They've rebranded themselves Every, EVRI, because nobody wants to do Hermes. Anyway, with that out of the way, let us go down the rabbit hole tonight. John, have you got any sound effects for us?
Well.
And here we are.
Right, Ed.
Great. Okay.
Yours.
Yeah. So, as I said, the UFO rabbit hole is one of my favorites, and the slides are really just to give us some talking points. But we'll start at the beginning. So, how many people here have heard about Zecharia Sitchin?
I can't say I have, but we can.
Well, he's an interesting character because he was originally a biblical scholar. And he was, well, I think he's dead now, but he was one of the few people that claimed to be able to read and understand some of the Sumerian little cuneiform tablets. They're basically little scrolls that the people would engrave images on. That thing that you can see him holding in the picture, that's basically an enlarged version of one of these cuneiform tablets. They were quite small, probably about 5 or 6 inches high, and they'd have engravings, and then you can roll them out onto a piece of clay and read them. But that's an interesting one that he's holding because it shows that the Sumerians had a concept of the sun and the planets, because you can see in the top left of the image.
So how many planets are there in that concept?
That one, I haven't counted them. I think the Sumerians actually got them all, but their whole theory was that humans were seeded on Earth by these gods that came from.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at that briefly, like I just did, I think there's about 9 planets there, and you can't see 9 planets with the naked eye.
No. But there's
11, and look at his book there. It's called The 12th Planet, right?
Yeah, that's because essentially he did this. Yeah, and what the Sumerians believed is that there was this 12th planet, which is effectively an extrasolar planet that's on a highly elliptical orbit, and that effectively interfered with the solar system, and that it's a dwarf. I think it's a dwarf star, brown dwarf. I think with a couple of moons. And supposedly on one or more of those moons is an advanced alien race who hundreds of thousands of years ago came to Earth and created Adam and Eve. And a lot of the biblical stories, for example, Noah's flood, is actually from an older Sumerian tale called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Yes. And so, yeah, I mean, and also the Sumerians are fascinating because they have cities, they have legal traditions, it's effectively everything that we would think of as a primitive but relatively modern society. They certainly weren't hunter-gatherers, and they just appear overnight about 6,000 years ago. And it just doesn't make any sense when you actually stop and think about it.
Well, there's a lot of things don't make sense, though. I mean, look at the age of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a whole massive rabbit holes. Yeah, but going back to the aliens thing, some of the interesting Sumerian cuneiform scrolls contain images, as you can see on the one on the left, what looks, for all intents and purposes, like some sort of flying craft.
It does. It looks like a flying cigar.
Yeah, something like that. And then the one on the right is interesting, because those 2 figures are standing around this. It looks like some sort of energy device, some kind of primitive drawing of some kind of, I don't know, but I just...
They definitely look like hands at the end of those tentacles.
It looks like a Van de Graaff generator with electrical plasma coming out of it.
That was what I thought as well. And it's, You've got the bird-like figure above it as well. It's just fascinating that supposedly really primitive culture would kind of create imagery like this, and sort of where did the idea come from? I mean, I don't know. Did they just dream it up? Is it something based on something they've seen? Something they've seen that they don't understand, they're trying to interpret, or...
Well, I mean, I would say that people don't dream things up out of thin air.
No.
Generally, what you do is you try and interpret things that you've actually seen. And
Absolutely.
when you look at the one on the left with the crescent, underneath the flying object, that's a recurring theme throughout a lot of different primitive societies, and a lot. Have you ever read Velikovsky and Worlds in Collision?
I haven't. No, I should get to that one.
The whole basis of the electric universe, and it's quite interesting. And that's showing you that maybe the planets haven't been in the orbits that they're in just now for that long.
Absolutely, and I mean the position of Earth in the solar system doesn't make sense, because there's a fairly regular distance between each of the other planets, and the Earth is kind of sitting here, and where there kind of should be a planet, there's an asteroid belt. So it's almost like there was a planet where the asteroid belt is now, and something collided with it and knocked it like a snooker ball or a cue ball or something.
That's one possibility, but the other problem with our solar system is that it's the wrong way round, because the gas giants should be near the sun, and the rocky planet should be further out.
You would think so. And then there's the moon, which
every other solar system that they appear to have found is that's how it's laid out. So why is ours so different?
Absolutely. And also, why is our moon ridiculously large? Because compared to the moons going around the other planets,
and ridiculously massless compared to its size.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it ring like a bell when you hit it?
Yeah, but this is the sort of rough track of the this 12th planet that the Sumerians called Nibiru, or Planet X. And yeah, as you can see, it's a really elliptical orbit, and I think the Sumerians said 3,600 year orbital, whatever it's called. But who knows? I mean, it's just a fascinating thing. The other one that's really
the thing about Nibiru and Planet X is plenty of people have tried to prove its existence, right? And they have. People have tried and tried and tried, and all we can go on is what we have seen and what we know, and so far, nothing has come of it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely right.
The orbital period is something like what, 26,000 years or something.
3,600. If memory serves me correctly. So I mean, it's entirely possible that's well outside. I mean, that's outside the length of most civilizations, let alone
well, exactly. And
lifespan.
And at the end of the day, I'm happy to be. I'm open to anything. My mind's always been open to anything. And so it's always worth, if people genuinely believe it and they think it's true and they're going to hunt this thing down and find evidence of it, then all power to them, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, there are other fascinating things like ancient gold mines in Africa that archaeologists kind of ignore because they just don't make any sense. And there's loads of the archaeological stuff. I mean, some of these images from South America, and the two from Guatemala, I mean, they just look so much like some kind of
suit.
Yeah, absolutely. Some sort of survival suit, some kind of space suit, and also the one in the middle, the Mayan one, with the kind of nifty little helmet that the little character has on it.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at how small it is, the carving, especially the one on the right as well, is so intricate and really quite beautiful. But there's loads of these sorts of artifacts floating around. So the point being that I'm personally convinced that at some point in the distant past, humans have interacted with someone not of this earth.
Could it have been a previous technological civilization?
Could be.
You know,
I mean,
it wipes itself out basically.
sure. I mean, if there's some sort of, say, for example, some technologically advanced civilization rose up on Earth 20, 30,000 years ago, and then there was some sort of cataclysm, I don't know, a magnetic pole shift or an asteroid or something, not necessarily an extinction level event, but enough that the advanced civilization was wiped out and the only people left are sort of Aboriginal people and tribal people and stuff like that. And they would have no frame of reference for all this advanced technology. They still don't. I mean, there's tribes out there that don't have any contact with the outside world.
Yes.
And if they see an airplane flying overhead, they start shooting arrows at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yet you have tribes like the Dogon. Have you
that was the next slide, which is the Dogon, because I mean, I spent the first 10 years of my life in Africa. So I've always had a connection to the place. And when I first found out about the Dogon, I mean, it's a totally different part of Africa from where I used to live. But the fact that this tribe knows about a celestial object, i.e. Sirius B, which I mean, you can't see it with the naked eye, you can't see it with a telescope. The only way you can know it's there is, I think it's by measuring the break in the light on Sirius A or something. It's really difficult to see, but the Dogon know all about it, and they know they have cultural legends that talk about that basically describe the orbital period and things like that. And how did they know that? And I mean, I've heard two explanations which kind of track, either of which could be true. One of which is the obvious one, that somehow they were visited by creatures in the ancient past from Sirius, I don't know, a planet in the Sirius system or whatever.
Right.
And that somehow they decided to contact the Dogon, and the Dogon have maintained their kind of cultural traditions and cultural memory of the event.
Yeah.
And the other one is a psychedelic explanation.
Well, yeah, I was going to say option C. I'm going to add an option C into the mix here already. Is they simply guessed?
No.
For something like a star that you can't see, that you know it's there.
Yeah. Why would you guess there's a double star there?
Well,
that and they get the color right and everything, because it's a blue star compared to the other one, which is a bright star. No, that doesn't wish. Option C would be they retained information from a previous technological civilization
that's possible.
Yeah, that's also possible.
Because when we say that there could have been technological civilizations in the past that have wiped themselves out, essentially, that is very likely, in fact, the track that we're already on. And as we say, history repeats itself, right? So we could just be on a cycle of rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
There's a channel on YouTube, I think I've mentioned it before, called Suspicious Observers.
Yeah.
And the science of catastrophism, and Charles Hapgood being connected to the CIA, and it's effectively torching his own field of study. And evidence that the geomagnetic poles have already started moving.
Yeah.
And that we know for a fact that the Earth's magnetic field is weakening at an increasingly fast rate. And
people don't quite understand how quickly the poles can shift as well.
Yeah, and then there's the hypothesis that Suspicious Observers, and it's based on what is his name? I think it's Thomas Chan. It's not this guy from Suspicious Observer's original work, but he talks about the fact that the sun every 12,000 years has what you best be described as a micronova, and that coincides with, generally speaking, a weakening of the Earth's magnetic field, and then you get Earth crust displacement. And there's actually evidence around the world for that. So we could all be wiped out in the next 20 to 30 years anyway, because the timescales that Chan Thomas was...
I best start drinking again, eh, John?
Yeah, I picked the wrong. I picked the wrong week to give up amphetamines. I tell you. But yeah, so that's possibly a subject for another rabbit hole exploration. Is the whole catastrophism thing. Let's go back to the UFOs though, and fast forward all the way to World War II. Now, how many of you know that there have been long-standing rumors of a crash of some sort of UFO/UAP in the Black Forest in Germany in the late 1930s?
I was aware of something, and I was also aware, and you've probably got this on the list as well, of Nazi experimentation going forwards with things such as Die Glocke.
Yep.
There it is.
That's this one. Yep. Die Glocke, and that's Victor Schauberger. And
Yes.
and the rabbit hole with this is that when the craft crashed in the Black Forest, the Germans basically went to Schauberger because he had some fairly interesting ideas, and they said, "Look, we got all this shit that we just found in this forest. What can you make of it?" And Schauberger created two things. There was Die Glocke, which had something to do with levitation. It's like something spinning over Mercury, or I don't really understand the science.
And probably time travel.
They were
'cause
trying to create time travel with Die Glocke, yeah.
the crash in Kecksburg.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, with all the bloody Nazis now running the world.
Yeah.
I've had a few drunken moments where I've thought, hang on a minute, maybe they did. Who knows? But yeah, it was Die Glocke and the Hannibal, which was the other UFO shaped. And then there's the Foo Fighters, which I got the slides the wrong way, the ordering incorrectly, but lots and lots of reports from fighter pilots of what the Americans and the British pilots used to call Foo Fighters, which were basically weird glowing lights in the sky that used to follow them and tail them and kind of buzz them sometimes. I don't think they ever actually engaged them, but it was certainly enough to scare the crap out of them, and they were never explained.
No, and I believe we are seeing, as of late, or we have been seeing, the White House has been declassifying UFO files left, right, and centre. So, just the sheer level of reporting has been through the roof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the Pentagon has released some absolutely fascinating video, like gun camera footage of objects that their pilots have encountered. Now, one has to always look at everything relating to UFOs from as many different directions as possible,
and you have to wonder why the Pentagon, of all people, would release such things. And John,
there's only one reason why that stuff's been released, and it's because they want to scare their enemies that they've got better technology than they have. So
either that, or it's just another way to worry
people. But no, I think what the Pentagon are doing is they've got drones that can travel at excessive speed. They can't have pilots in these things, but they'll be high-powered drones, effectively. They've all been filmed within military test areas, so all the flying areas are within military test areas only, and they're basically just trying to give China and Russia the idea that we've got better technology than you have.
But we probably do.
Well, it's kind of backfired, hasn't it?
What, with the hypersonic missile, John?
Yeah, when Russia shows the actual hypersonic missile in action, and then America goes, "Oh fuck, we can't make that."
I mean, it's impossible to tell, because the one thing that I do know is the military, whatever tech they've got, is probably 20 or 30 years further ahead than we realize.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
if you look at Boston Dynamics, right, they're showing us. Can you imagine what they've actually got?
Well, exactly.
I don't know what I'd do if I saw one of those bloody robots in the street. I feel like we should all be carrying around a can of black spray paint or something to spray the fucking sensors, and then you see them. There was
either that or a lump hammer.
Yeah,
expanding the foam filler.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what happens if you just turn them upside down. Those robot dogs, assuming it doesn't have a bloody gun on it, which I saw earlier on. I'm wondering whether it works if you just turn them upside down.
Well, the thing is, also they've got a big weakness, because if you just get on top of them and ride them like a rodeo, what exactly can they do?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Just get on top of them. Just start swinging a rope around, or swinging your hat around, going, "Come on, doggy, come on!"
It's madness. But then, when you actually go back to World War II, humans went from kind of horses and carts and just about inventing the automobile to this V2.
Yes, very quickly.
Raining fire down on London. And I mean, yeah, wartime, humans tend to evolve technologically during war, but it's still a pretty big leap. And there's some more pictures of Foo Fighters.
I mean, let's face it, the Wild West, the actual Wild West, where people went into desert towns built of wood with the saloons with the double doors, riding only horses and perhaps a buggy, was not too long ago from when we sit now, to be honest.
150 years?
Well, I would say probably even sooner, 120, 130 years.
Yeah.
And we've gone from that to where we are now. We are sitting in 3 different parts of the country talking to each other, with people able to watch us anywhere in the world. Look Absolutely. How far we have come.
Yeah, absolutely.
In such a short period of time.
And I mean, that brings us onto Operation Paperclip, which everybody's got to know about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then, and that was the German scientists, basically the ones at Nuremberg were all the crap ones, and a few that they were like, oh, we don't like him anyway, we'll just sacrifice him because he's a bit of a knob.
Yeah. People don't understand that it wasn't just like 10 or 20.
No, it was lots. That's the only picture that I could find of all of them.
And they were recruited.
I think that's some of them, but it's certainly not all of them.
No, not all of them. Sorry, no, but it's a lot. That was the largest gathering picture that I could find.
And remember,
I was researching it.
Russia took just as many as we did. So.
And some of them were really bad dudes.
What do you mean, some of them? Pretty much all of them.
Well, you've got people like Werner von Braun. That was basically, he was kind of more scientisty, but then you don't know with any of them who they really were or what they were really doing.
But we also have to remember that every single one of them was working with the joint goal of annihilating as many human beings as possible. Right? That's what they were all working towards, and whether or not they were doing it under duress, that whatever they were working towards was annihilation.
It depends. It depends. What you're quoting just now is the party line, right? So that's the narrative, because remember, history's only ever written by the victors.
This is true. This is true. Okay.
Always 2 sides to every story. And I'm not making excuses, much as we don't make excuses for Russia and Ukraine, right? But there are always 2 sides to every story. And when you've got an out-and-out victor, you will only ever get one side of that story.
That is true.
And as we're sorry to Ben, but as we're discovering that I never even thought I'd be living through, when you have a large group of humans in a mass formation,
yes,
they can do all kinds of crazy shit that you just sit there and think, what the fuck?
And the thing is, every single one of them believes they're justified in their actions, and when you actually take a step back out of the bubble, you see that their actions are not just despicable, they are evil in some steps.
Well, it's like those stoneheads that have been going around reporting people. I mean, okay, I could see why someone who is overly sensitive might take my profile picture and be a bit offended by it. I was trying to cause offense, but not so much so that I'd gotten nuked. But when you actually look at some of the threads that those little stoneheads, where they sit there and gloat about it, and
they're hateful.
Yeah, it is, and I mean we're basically just trying to spread the word and do the information, but there's this mentality of, I just can't understand it. I can't relate to it.
We can't relate to it, but I certainly understand it, because what has happened over the last 2.5 years, and obviously we have to be careful with our words, but has really, really emboldened people to show their genuine selves. And for a lot of people, their genuine selves is really not attractive. Is really not appealing. We saw it in the shops, even.
Yeah.
When people got that little bit of what they thought was power, when they could report on their neighbours, or they could chastise somebody not covering their breathing apparatus, and they did it, and they did it with glee.
Yeah. Yep, and they're still doing it with glee.
I mean, they're gonna fall foul of our ability to still have a conversation, because there are alternative platforms out there, and whilst they may not be the dog's bollocks, shall we say, they exist, and as you both know, we are regrouping on all of them.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to give Twitter as little energy as possible, because I mean I spent a lot of time trying to build my main account, and we all did, and I mean we're all coming from having accounts that were nailed, that were 10K plus followers, and to organically build an account like that where I
went past 12K organically twice, Ed.
And it takes an awful lot of work, and then to have some little wanker bastards then just get their rocks off just by reporting you for stupid shit, and then also having Twitter who
but it's not even that, it's the fact that any company is happy to censor free speech on a whim, because that's effectively just what they're doing.
Well, the thing that I find hilarious is that at a time when Twitter is going to court with Elon, because Elon's pulling out because he says, look, it's all bots, I don't want to buy it, I thought I was buying a network with people, and Twitter are now trying to force him to do it, and at the same time they're kicking off a whole bunch of genuine people that are definitely not bots. They're just making their own numbers look really shit.
And yet you can still go onto Twitter and watch people dying. You can watch people being injured. You can watch pornography.
Yeah,
you can do all that, and these people, get a free pass.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if my Vlandel in my old profile picture had a picture of Vladimir Putin on it instead of the God King Emperor of Europe, then it would have been absolutely no problem at all. So yeah, it's those hypocritical bastards. There's some more, and Werner von Braun, and I just love that photo of the Saturn V rocket, because I'm a space nerd.
You know what? I have once built a Lego version of the Saturn V rocket, right? And this thing stands from the floor to about 1.5 meters, and it's intricate, it's detailed, it's like 110 quid.
Mate, I saw that thing in the Lego shop and I wanted it really badly, and then I thought to myself, I just can't justify that.
Have you seen a real one?
Yes, I've seen the real one. I've seen the real one. So
they just go on forever, because they can't stand them up, they're too high. So they just lay it on the ground in Kennedy's rocket park.
They do, and it's
on forever.
It is very, very intimidating, isn't it? When I've seen a shuttle launch.
Though, I mean, I know this might sound a bit off the wall, but when you look at the alleged capsules that people are supposed to have gone to space in,
right,
there wasn't enough space to put a cat in there, Now, people, you can't go in that and spend, in some cases, 5, 6, 7 days in an orbit, because you'd have a DVT, because you can't move. I mean, I've sat in them and you just cannot move. It's just ridiculous. So you could not sit in that in a spacesuit, soiling yourself for 4 or 5 days. You just couldn't do it.
No.
And I just don't believe they did it.
Well, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Like I say, I've seen a shuttle launch in the flesh, and I tell you, rockets going off at Kennedy is something to behold.
Yeah, I know, but when you actually see what they're meant to have gone up in,
yes,
and the amount of space they don't have, and the facilities they don't have,
Yeah. So it looks like we're being led on to the big one.
Yeah, this is the.
Oh, you missed the one. You missed the one in the Wild West. Remember that one that took out the windmill and everything?
Yeah, but the thing with that is that it's so
long ago and no picture.
yeah, there's no real imagery about it. And it's yeah, I mean the accounts that I've read about it definitely seem to indicate that something happened, and there was a period. There are certain parts of the United States and the rest of the world, for that matter, where these sorts of things have been seen very, very frequently. I mean, the Ladakh region of India is a disputed. It's one of the disputed areas between India and Pakistan, like mountainous Himalayan thing. And there's a couple of areas in that where these things are so common that people don't even bat an eyelid. And it just makes you think, where are they coming from? Who are they? Are they from other planets? Are they from another time? I mean, could it be from an alternate version of the universe? Could it be from a different time period? Could they be super advanced humans in the year 2350 or something that invented a time machine and are just going back to study their idiotic forebears? But yeah, it's Roswell, where
Hollow Earth.
There's Hollow Earth as well. I mean, the flat earthers have got some interesting theories about that as well, in terms of it not just being the Earth, and I'm not a flat earther at all. But this stuff is fascinating.
We would like to actually have some flat earthers on, wouldn't we, John?
I reached out to Bob Nodell, but he never came back to me. I'll try again.
Yeah, we'd like to have some flat earthers on the show, because I want to know what they believe. I want to know their evidence behind it, and it would be really nice to have that conversation. Now, are we going to agree with them? Probably not, but you know.
I struggle with it. I was talking to a friend about the whole thing last night, and there's a really good the Germ Warfare channel on Odyssey. I think I posted this on my my social media.
Right.
But there's a really good interview with a flat earther guy that you might be able to get onto the show. And I'm still not convinced, even after having watched that. But he did make some very interesting points that I need to take away and do some research about.
So there's a couple of points about what they say, that what they call the globe Earth, right? That I find hard to reconcile, because if you look at the night sky, everything revolves around Polaris, okay? So how can one part of the Earth revolve around a single star all the time, when we're supposed to be not only spinning, which is fine, right, but we're traveling through space,
the
sun, and we're doing it in a corkscrew fashion, because we're not just, nothing's in a flat plane. If you look at it from the point of view of how it's meant to work, we're going in this big corkscrew around the sun. So how can one point always point at the same star? Because at some point, that point's got to have wavered by a number of degrees. I don't understand how it's meant to point at one star all the time.
Me neither.
And this is definitely an argument for another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got. Well, it's good, because we need to make sure that we've got more rabbit holes. So we can do a flat Earth rabbit hole for sure. I'd love to be involved in that.
I'd love to be involved in it, but I'd love to have some flat earthers join us. I think it would be worth doing.
We could do with some people that are right into it. So because I've had a dig at it, right, and a lot of their arguments are hard to refute.
They really are. There was one on this interview with Germ where he talks about, there's a book called 16 Emergency Landings That Prove Flat Earth, and it's basically 16 times where a plane landed in a really crazy position from the perspective of a globe Earth, but if you look at it as from the perspective of a flat Earth, then the emergency landing made complete sense. Now, I find it fascinating, but otherwise we'll end up talking about flat Earth in the next hour.
We've had a report from BNT Chat.
Okay.
And Dayman 30 says he's available.
I like it.
Well, set something up. I'd love to be involved.
Send us an email or something, Dayman.
John at chasingdescent.com.
Yeah, send us an email and we'll get in touch, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, no problem at all. I mean, like I said, we are open to absolutely anything on here, and we want to talk about absolutely anything. And the only way you can reconcile differences is through conversation, right?
Absolutely, and mutual understanding, mutual respect.
Huh?
Not if you're Liz Truss.
Well, no, not if you Liz Truss. You just arm Taiwan and start World War III. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Or if you're Rishi, oh no, I wouldn't sit down with Putin because why would I want to talk to him? Because that's how you fix things, Mike.
Exactly. It's like, who would you like to be murdered by? The whole Tory election is like, who would you like to be murdered by? Freddy Krueger or freaking Hannibal Lecter? And would you like to be chainsawed into little pieces or just eaten raw? Oh dear! Right,
topic Ed, bring us back.
Yeah,
let's go down to space.
Roswell. Yeah, the one thing that I think we can fairly safely say, also based on Jesse Marcel's.
Wait a minute. Shush. Wait a minute.
I want to believe.
John, boys and their toys, eh? New toys are fun though. I like it.
No, he's got it. He's gonna play with it, right?
Oh, I've been good tonight. I've been good.
You've been quite good, yeah.
Well, let's just say that Roswell, the official. I mean, this is where the official bullshit starts because it's clearly not. They say one thing and then say another thing. And
they came out straight up, didn't they? Originally,
yeah.
They came out straight up and they said that the RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region.
I'll come out with that, didn't he?
What?
Yeah, and then it was the next day, and Jesse Marcel was put under a load of pressure. He's the guy in the picture to recount his story.
Yeah.
And I mean, he did a deathbed confession, I think, to his son, where he said, "Look, I was pressured into doing it, and they threatened pretty much everything, and so I just did it and kept my mouth shut." Where it gets, and this is a discovery for me that only happened probably about 5 years ago now, was finding out about Philip J. Corso. Mm-hmm. And he is absolutely fascinating because he's he had a distinguished career in the US Army and didn't say anything until 6 months to a year before the end of his life. And he wrote the book the day after Roswell, and he did some interviews which are worth looking up on YouTube.
Okay.
Or another platform. I've linked one which is in the that one.
Is your goal come to visit?
I was going to say, is your bird come to visit?
It's at the kitchen window.
It's not.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, no, it's at the kitchen window.
Does it do that? Does it like land on your window and just call you? Just like. Rah, 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 rah.
No, they tend to call each other. Mostly, if it's just me, it'll tap on the window to get my attention.
I know what I'd be doing with that.
And it's also the time of year. They're all more screechy because all the silly little grey baby seagulls are all flopping around everywhere, acting like idiots. So, yeah.
So for those who don't know, Ed daily feeds seagulls.
I've got a couple of gulls that decided that I was a really good fly-through avian McDonald's and started tapping on my window, and I tried ignoring them. They're really persistent, and in the end I gave in and had some food, and now I have a gull waiting for me whenever I go into the kitchen. It'll swoop in, and I post them on both my Gettr and my Truth Social accounts, and you can find them on #DailySeagull.
So back to Philip J. Corso.
Yeah, Philip J. Corso. So basically, he was in a division of the army that I'd never heard about called the Foreign Technology Division. And by foreign, I don't mean Russian. I mean not terrestrial. And effectively, what he says is that he was passed tech that they were discovering from this crashed ship. And his job was to funnel it out to private industry. And so they would go to, say, Lockheed or one of these other defense contractors and say, "Oh yeah, we found this, and it's Yeah, it's Chinese. We found it in Chinese. Yeah, some shit like that. Just Chinese, whatever. Here, see what you can make of it. And
Ignore the symbols; they're just Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically the reason for that is to get around scrutiny, because if it goes to a private company, then they can have commercial secrets and all that kind of thing. Whereas if it's the US government that is developing it, then they have disclosure rules and they have to tell people about it and they have to account for the money and all this kind of thing. And he talks about night vision, he talks about optic fibers, he talks about integrated circuits. And integrated circuits is a really interesting one, because if you go to the conventional news source of Wikipedia and you look up integrated circuit, it's one of those revolutionary technologies that wasn't really invented by anyone. I mean, if people who have invented, say, DNA, I mean, Crick and Watson are practically household names for anybody's.
Harvard's DNA, they didn't invent it.
Well, no, they discovered it, but I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is the first person to find something or do something or create something is normally put up on a freaking pedestal and kind of worshipped, and yet these integrated circuits just seem to kind of appear.
Isn't the transistor basically the start of an integrated circuit? Because all an integrated circuit does is just an accumulation of transistors, capacitors, whatever resistors, all packed together in one chip instead of being spread out on a circuit board. Sure.
Yeah, but it's the miniaturization of it as well, and just, I mean, World War II, the old ENIAC systems, it was all vacuum tubes and kind of mechanical computers, and humans went from mechanical computers to integrated circuits in the space of about 10 or 15 years.
Have you not seen Terminator?
Have I not seen what, Terminator? Yeah, maybe. So this video, like I said, I shall post it on YouTube afterwards. The book is definitely worth reading, because he goes into a lot of detail about some of the stuff that he.
The only thing that puts me off people that do this are not. It doesn't put me off the people. What I don't understand is, where's the end game for the alleged extraterrestrials? What are they trying to achieve here?
Well, we have so many people saying so many different things, and that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah, but why would it only be one country that's got any knowledge of it? Or if all countries have it, do we then have a global government in secret? What's the end game for the extraterrestrials? What are they trying to do? I mean, I don't know.
One of the things that I've heard is it relates to humans inventing, testing, and using nuclear weapons. And a lot of the sightings, they've basically put it this way: ET has taken a large amount of interest in military sites that have nuclear weapons, and there's been stories of them shutting them down. For example, there was one.
So would opposing countries.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? If they're always seen around military sites, nuclear sites, test sites, first of all, it could be opposing countries, and second of all, it could be them testing their own stuff.
Absolutely, and I mean, there's plenty of
evidence of that in Roswell, for example.
Sure, and there's plenty of stories to say that a lot of sightings now, particularly modern ones, are actually sightings of super advanced military tech.
And I don't doubt it at all. Like you said, like we all alluded to earlier, military technology is at least 20 to 30 years ahead of what the general public are currently playing with, right? For all we know, they've already got the Star Trek transporter. They can just beam me up, Scotty, for all we know. But, going back to what John was saying, and once again, this is a rabbit hole, right? We're going down a rabbit hole. For all we know, our Prime Minister is elected, marched into a sealed room, and has a video conference with Zygon, the leader of the universe.
Well, Bill Hicks does a wonderful little sketch where he says, "I know what happens when the president is elected. Once he's sworn in, he goes back to the White House, and he's ushered into this dark room, and sitting around a table are the 12 biggest capitalist scumfucks on the planet.
Yeah.
And the head capitalist guy sits there with a big fat cigar and says, 'Sit down, Mr. President.' And the president sits down, and this screen comes down, and a video plays, and it's footage of the Kennedy assassination in perfect color from an angle that nobody's ever seen before. And they watch that, and then the screen goes up, the lights come on, and the head capitalist guy turns to the president and goes, 'So, Mr. President, any questions?'"
Yeah. Well, I can believe that. I mean, you remember that picture of was it Jacob Rothschild poking Prince Charles in the chest?
Yeah, but I mean, there's also going back to the UFOs. There's actually a Kennedy connection to the assassination, because I've heard one of the things that Kennedy was doing to piss off the powers that be was that he wanted much closer cooperation with the Soviets in space. He didn't want it to be a competition. He wanted them effectively to go to the moon together.
I would like to interject here just for a minute, because we've had a comment in the chat that I actually want to address. Vaughan here says 20 to 30 years ahead, don't do glowing orbs moving at Mach 10 though. Vaughan, Concorde is 40 years old, right? Concorde is a 40-year-old technology, and we had that
well, the SR-71 did Mach 3.5.
Yeah, and that's 30, 40 years.
Yeah, but I understand where Vaughan is coming from, though, because it's not just about how fast it's going, but it's about what the acceleration is, and also what the maneuverability is. Because when you hear some of the released Pentagon gun camera footage, and you're listening to those pilots talk about this thing that they're seeing, and I mean, bearing in mind that these are military aviators. And
you've got to remember, these military aviators are talking about things that they know, i.e., they know how a jet engine works. Right now, if these developed drones and things aren't using jets, aren't using propellers, aren't using rockets, if they're using like electromagnetic propulsion of some kind, which is quite possible.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean anti-gravity, over unity energy, and again, they could be deep state secret things. Who knows? Yeah. But the interesting thing that I find with the technology is that it took us hundreds and hundreds of years to go from a horse and cart to a steam train, and then we went from a steam train to rockets and the internet and optic fibers and stuff like that in a matter of 100 years. And it just feels like we were given a boost somewhere along the line. And I suspect that that's Roswell, for lack of a better word.
Well, if you are to believe people like, I'm going to give you a name, I don't know if it's on here, but Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar, the movie, there's a brilliant movie, because there's the original interview we did in the 80s, and they stupidly actually didn't cover Bob Lazar in this, which was daft. But Lazar is absolutely fascinating, because he did a new film called, what's it called? Hang on a sec. Let me just pull up a web browser. Oh no, hang on, I've bollocks that up. Leave that. He's basically, there's a film, I think it might be on Netflix or something like that. I think it's called Lazar. Let me just double check that. It's really worth watching, because he's just so convincing. He's like Philip Corso. When you watch the video with Philip Corso, you'll see what I mean. There's something about them that is just really believable.
I mean, I've watched many an interview with Lazar, and he seemed convinced himself of what he saw.
Yeah,
I will say that.
There's the other thing as well, though. I mean, these might not actually be physical aircraft.
So what you're saying, they could be props?
No, they could be like blue beam technology, where you're projecting stuff that looks. I mean, they've been experimenting with holograms that look like real things. And the thing, if it's something like that, then it can move with incredible speed and with complete disregard of the laws of physics, because it's not a physical object.
It could be. There was one thing that got me with the film with Bob Lazar. Is one of the things that he got quite excited about was this palm scanner that he described in his initial interview in the 80s as the method that he would get into S3, which is the part of Area 51 that he was working in. And the interviewer had actually dug up a picture of this technology because it was so old it had been released, and it was exactly the same as Lazar had described. And it's one of those tiny little details that just when you see the expression on his face when the interviewer shows him the picture, he's completely convinced that what he saw is real, and he's he's like a super nerd. His job is science. His whole life is science.
They initially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they initially try to say he didn't even work there? And then they dug up evidence that he did, and so they had to sort of refute it and say, well, yeah, he actually did work here. And that in itself is very interesting to me, because they tried to simply deny he was even on the premises, and yet we've got proof of him getting the flights from McCarran Airport in Vegas, because that's how the staff generally get into Area 51. They go to Las Vegas International Airport, and they get on an unmarked Boeing jet engine and fly from McCarran to Area 51. They fly in.
Yeah, and that actually brings us nicely on to the next one, because I'm sure everyone listening and you guys have heard about Area 51.
Yes.
But supposedly there's an Area 52 as well, which is the Dugway Proving Ground, which is super secret chemical, biological weapons testing facility, again, out in the middle of nowhere. And very strange things have been seen around the base. Weird lights in the sky, as you can see in some of the pictures. Absolutely the same, if not heavier, security presence in terms of get anywhere near it, and a pickup truck just appears from nowhere with a whole load of armed goons in it telling you to go the hell away. Mm-hmm. And also SUVs disappearing into the desert, which is the bottom right-hand picture, which is actually from a video. There's a great series, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix, it's called UFOs, The Unexplained Files, and you can see the actual video. It might be on YouTube as well, and it's literally just a dust trail from a car driving across the desert that then just suddenly disappears. And reports of deep underground military bases where this technology is stored. There's also
there's underground military bases even here in the UK, right? They're everywhere. They exist.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's even stories that you can actually go in the US. You can go from the East Coast to the West Coast entirely underground. I
mean, I don't know the veracity of that, but it's probably something that you can do.
Again, it's not. I've never done it myself, so I can't speak from first-hand experience. But there's all sorts of stories from multiple places, multiple different sources of deep underground military bases all around the world. And what are they storing there? What are they being used for? It's the questions are fascinating. And Dugway is.
John knows what they're being used for, don't you, John?
It's near Salt Lake City.
So it's in Utah?
Yeah. I mean, you can see it here on the map on my screen. And they've even got a visitor center for crying out loud, which is probably where they go, nothing to see here, don't worry, we test bombs and shit, we blow up pigs and things like that, just go away. Here's a t-shirt. And again,
I quite like a t-shirt, I'm not gonna lie.
And it's in the same way as Area 52 has San Francisco, which is where the staff live. I would imagine the same thing is probably true with Salt Lake City. But you never see anything on the surface with these bases. I think everything, or the vast majority of it, has got to be underground.
It's either within mountains or underground, yeah.
And that's a map of the deep underground, or the speculated map of deep underground military bases.
Always risky, isn't it?
And
it makes it all the more. It makes it all the more like authentic when it says by Elijah 1757.
Yeah, I could have cropped that off and I just left it. Leave me alone.
And it says D.U.M.B. Dumb.
In military base.
Yeah, and you just have to wonder whether that's not just them taking the piss.
Rendlesham Forest. That was an incident with the US Air Base, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what they call Britain's Roswell.
Yeah,
it's one of the more famous UFO encounters, again near a US air base. And it's, I mean, there's hours and hours and hours of video footage about it, people investigating it, the interviews, because it's fairly modern as well. There's quite a lot of interviews with the personnel that were involved, and lots of secrecy. As soon as people start getting silenced and told that they're not allowed to speak, my ears prick up. And
absolutely.
I'm instantly more suspicious.
So I'm gonna pose a question, and it's always been a tough one. Well, for the last maybe decade or so, it's been a tough one for me to reconcile, because we have so many blurry images, and we have maybe some lights in the sky, but we never see a fully formed object. And with everybody now being a journalist, with everybody with a high definition camera in their pocket, how are we not picking something up?
Have you ever tried to get your phone out your pocket, turn it on, get the camera up, and focus on something that's traveling at the speed of even a helicopter?
Right, I hear you, but with literally billions of images being snapped probably an hour, you would think one would exist.
Have you ever heard of the Phoenix Lights?
Yes.
Because that
plenty of footage of that. I'm aware.
What about the triangle thing that went over Belgium? There was loads of photographs of that.
I personally, that flying triangle, I'm of the opinion that one specifically is US tech. I think that is deep state.
ERB or something, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's deep state tech, and what sort of technology they're using, but it's that one just has a feel of an inside job where they can just wave this great big. I mean, it's like the stealth fighter.
I was about to move on to the stealth fighter, because that's actually really, really old tech now, right?
Yeah.
But
you see stuff when it's new. It's hidden.
Well, no, but the stealth bomber is probably 40 or 50 years old at this point, and look where we were 80 years ago. Look where we were technology-wise 80 years ago. We didn't even have proper cars. And
yeah, and then look at how much money has gone missing from the Pentagon. I mean, going back to our 9/11 episode, where we were talking about how Donald Rumsfeld was announcing that they couldn't account for $1.3 trillion or something like that in transactions. Yeah, trillion with a T. And that was the day before 9/11, and then the investigation into that missing money was being done in the precise part of the Pentagon that was hit by whatever it was hit by, or blown up.
What the hell was in Building 7? That's all I want to know.
All the records were in Building 7 and World Trade Center 7.
Yeah.
Yep, and also WTC 7 was where Giuliani's
base of operations was.
Yeah, control center. Yeah. But there was also in all three collapsed towers, there were also loads of SEC records, FBI records, banking records. There was a whole bunch of documents and shit that went up, and a lot of investigations couldn't continue after 9/11.
Absolutely.
Because all of the shit was gone.
Convenient that, isn't it, guys?
Oh, absolutely.
Just
yeah, so I don't know. We've really been down the 9/11 rabbit hole. But this is some stills of some of the gun camera footage that the Pentagon has been releasing in the last few years.
So look at the bottom left, right?
What a reason. Right. if the military release something, they release it for a reason, right?
Oh yeah.
They don't release stuff like this unless they know what it is and they've got partners behind it.
No, I agree
Absolutely.
with you. But look at the bottom left here. We've got a photograph of the Twitter logo in the sky.
It does look a bit like it. But there's always two questions. There's the obvious question of what the fuck is it? But then there's the actually more interesting question of why is it being released? As John said, why now? Why we're suddenly seeing this flurry of governments around the world releasing UFO information. Even this UFO's unexplained files, there's a guy called Nick Pope who I've got a picture of right at the end because he's a dude that I can never figure out whether he's legit, but he used to work for the Ministry of Defense in their kind of UFO. It was almost like the British version of Fox Mulder kind of thing, but without the Scully.
Do it.
Double processing.
And yeah, so the Ministry of Defense closed the thing down, and so Nick Pope then becomes a UFO expert, and he's in loads of these different documentary shows and mainstream TV, and he'll appear if there's like a Pentagon UFO release, you'll see him on BBC or Sky or whatever, and he's the kind of UFO expert.
So Stuart asks, and this is on brand, this is on topic. Will the deep state's next psyop be aliens?
That's it would be kind of fun. I mean, we do know that if there is some sort of alien invasion or some sort of something like that, that it's going to be most likely fake. And whether it's holograms or whether it's some sort of advanced tech that they've got that would just look to us mere mortals like it was something out of a film. I mean, I've got one of the things that was actually brings us on to the next bit. All of this space stuff, Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is a big one in terms of this notion of contact. E.T., obviously, and from the 70s onwards.
I'll be right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Star Trek. Star Trek originally, the original series was on in the 60s. It didn't really take off. And then when Star Wars became so wildly popular, they brought Star Trek back in movie form. And it kind of spawned an entire generation of different movies. And I mean, I was heavily in by it. I mean, I remember playing with a little model of the Enterprise when I was very, very little, and it's one of the reasons that UFOs have always fascinated me, because the idea of space has always really appealed to me. And as a little just to tell you how much of a space nerd I am, when I was at school in Zambia, the class that I was in, we never used to do any projects, and my friends who were in a different school always had this project work, and I really wanted, me nerdy that I am, I always wanted to do a project, so I lied to my mum and I said that the school had given me a project to do about the space shuttle, and my dad contacted the American embassy, and I got this whole massive information bundle from them and stuff like that, and I did this whole project completely lying to my mum about it the whole way through, took it off to school, and then told her I'd presented it, and she said, "Oh, was it good?" I said, "Yeah, no, I got an A for it." And teacher knew nothing about it, and that's a true story. But yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd.
I think we all are, right? I think we all are a bit of a nerd or anything like that in our own ways. I mean, I've always been absolutely fascinated with the idea of space. Also, I've been to, and John, I know you've been to Kennedy. And it's a really fascinating place. The space movies have always hooked me, and like you said at the beginning of the segment, is it predictive programming?
Well, that's the thing with Hollywood, because they're the ultimate propaganda merchants, and if something comes out, if a Hollywood film comes out, then on some level, it's what they, as in the deep state, as in the controllers, whatever we want to call them, it's somehow that's what they want us to be thinking about, and it's like the flurry of movies like Outbreak and Contagion and stuff like that before the you know what started, and Independence Day. I mean, the kind of the hype around it, and this, in a way, it's the same with Star Wars. And I mean, I love these films, but I still have to wonder whether even the X-Files. Go on, John.
The truth is out there.
Excellent. Right. And I mean, the X-Files is the same thing, because that's also, the X-Files was at the dawn of the internet age.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was when I was starting my career, and the internet was like the Wild West, and people were looking for ways to try and hack into American government servers and trying to figure out if there's a wet somewhere online that they could find the secret recipe for KFC's chicken and stuff like that.
Look at Peter.
And I mean, Chris Carter is an interesting one, the producer and creator of the X-Files, because to start with, when you look at him, he's a bit odd. But he's reported to, you have to wonder where his ideas come from, and the kind of breadth, because the X-Files runs over 12 seasons, and there's
two really awful movies.
Oh yeah, the movies weren't great, and I mean, there's a bunch of the episodes aren't really that great either. But I found a list on IMDb of all of the X-Files Alien story arc episodes, and so I created a playlist on my media server with just those on it, and when you watch them as if they're kind of one continuous episode, it's fascinating where these ideas came from, and the amount of the impact that the X-Files has had on popular culture, because certainly in the 90s it was enormous. And I mean, it spawned Independence Day, and everyone was talking about aliens, and nobody believed the government. And it's like we've now gone full circle in the last couple of years, where instead of people questioning the government and not believing what they're told, everyone's just being spoon-fed.
Yeah, because that's because the left, in effect, is in power in America, and has been for quite some time in reality. And what has happened is the propaganda machine that is Hollywood has come over to getting people not to question them, because they don't need to be questioned, because they're the left.
Listen, your government cares about you. Your government is there for you. Your government will never lead you astray. Your government would never blow up its own White House just to trick you.
Yeah, but they probably would.
I know. I
I wouldn't put it past them. And I mean, as fun as it would be to see it, I would still be watching it thinking, lying bastards. What are they not telling us?
Well, exactly. USOs, you unexplained sunken objects, I believe, right?
Yeah, unidentified submerged objects, and they're basically.
Are we going to talk about the sea bases?
Well, there's sea bases, but there's a lot of
normally.
And it goes to footage. So you just jump ahead one. There is some very interesting footage taken from military, basically naval vessels, and this is it's the Baltic Sea anomaly. It was captured on sonar. You can see that little inset image.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on the Baltic seabed. It looks very much like there's a
Millennium
trail.
Falcon down there.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, it looks like it crashed because it seems to have dug a trench as it went in.
Absolutely. And I mean, this one's an artist's rendering of it. And it's very, very deep, and nobody really knows what it is.
No.
But there are a lot of there's a lot of footage, videos of pilots. It's like some of the Pentagon gun camera releases are actually USOs, where you see these things just pop out of the water and then zip off at a great velocity, and then just pop back down into the water again.
Yeah.
So whether it's the same craft, I mean, whether we're just looking at different versions of the same thing, or whether they're different craft, or I don't know, maybe we're just like a petri dish for a bunch of different alien races, and it's like the Truman Show, just the whole planet. I don't know. But that one's absolutely fascinating because it really does look like the Millennium Falcon. But then again, who knows? Because the original sonar image is pretty indistinct. But I mean, that doesn't look like a natural formation. I know that for sure.
No, it does not.
And even on the original sonar, you can kind of see that it's almost like it's skidded in for landing.
So here's what we need to do, right? Somebody clip. So hold on, let me make sure that we're visible during this. Somebody clip this little segment here, right? This is my plea. James Cameron, we know you own submarines. Stop making Avatar movies. Get in your little submarine. Go down there with your cameras and show us what it is.
Yeah,
come on,
that
James.
would be awesome. Yeah, go on, James, please.
Yeah,
I'd love to know.
Nobody knows exactly where this is, other than the people that found it, because they're keeping it under their hat.
Yeah,
they don't have funding to explore it.
Right. So what you're saying is, we know it's in the Baltic Sea, right? Yeah. And we know James Cameron can get as much funding as he wants from Disney to make a movie about it, right?
And if the guys
come on, James.
Yeah, and if the guys who originally discovered it heard that James Cameron was interested, I bet they'd be all over him.
But is it one massive hoax?
I don't think so.
If they've not given the location, it could be.
It's anything is possible. We always have to maintain a skeptical mind.
Absolutely, and that's what this is about.
Absolutely,
but James Cameron, you can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah, we totally do.
James Cameron, explorer of the sea.
The other one that's very interesting is Russian divers, and they were in Lake Baikal, and they encountered these creatures, which you can see an artist rendering of, who had these sort of bubbles over their heads.
That's Doctor Who Sea Devils.
I was gonna say, is this an early rendering of Gungans? We're going to the Gungans. Mr. Jar Jar Binks.
It's who knows? They do look a bit like it, but
an early artist rendering of Gungans before they landed on the final design.
Yeah, or the artist that was asked to make the picture of it based on what the Russian divers described had watched too many Star Wars.
And not just that. Remember, if this is Russian and Russian divers, how sober were they when they went down there? Just
if they're scuba divers, they take it very seriously, because getting really drunk and going scuba diving, especially when you're it's extreme diving, because I think it was winter. I think they were under ice.
Okay.
Or at least it was.
And these creatures, did they simply see them? Were they attacked by them? What
well, they did. The Russians basically, they saw them, and then they tried to. I think they tried to like capture one of them or grab one of them, and essentially the Russian divers were flung up to the surface very, very quickly, which resulted in at least two of them dying eventually because of the pressure change. But yeah, they were essentially just shooed out of the way as soon as they tried to do anything involving kind of.
I have not heard of this one. I'm gonna have to look at this.
Look it up. It's called The Swimmers of Lake Baikal.
Okay.
And there's some really fascinating videos about it.
I tell you what, if Russia's to be believed, right, then let's face it. Vladimir Putin could walk on the ice, rip off his shirt, get out his bare chest, jump in there without a scuba suit, swim down and capture one with his bare hands.
Oh bollocks! He wouldn't need to. No, Vlad he's got his own army of. Do you not follow the bloody Daily Vlad, for crying out loud? No, No, Vlad. I've got photographic evidence
Nelly.
of Vlad training his attack submarines on the back of a blue whale.
No.
He's got a battalion of blue whales.
Just getting silly.
We're going down rabbit holes, John.
Up.
Sounds like crap when you say it.
Right.
I'm gonna pad myself out, John. You take over.
Project Bluebeam. What do you mean we take over? Ed's in charge. Anyway, Project Bluebeam, Ed.
Well, Bluebeam is the original Project Bluebeam was it was one of those crazy American ideas where they were going to use a hologram of Jesus or something over Cuba to somehow discredit Castro. But the whole point behind it is holographic technology. And then we talked a little bit about it in our 9/11 rabbit hole. And Bluebeam, it's one of those super secret, crazy military projects that if there's if we suddenly start seeing spaceships, or they start broadcasting a big spaceship hovering over the White House or something, and there's some sort of contact message, then it could well be a hologram. But the Bluebeam technology, it's a whole, probably a whole rabbit hole to itself. Disclosure, which is essentially the releasing of
Could you eat them
files.
Could you eat them any faster?
I'm enjoying them, John.
Are you sure? Because the little ones will just go straight down your gullet.
Look how tiny they are.
Yeah, okay. Right,
Tiny.
No, they're tiny little sugar things that
Yeah.
really don't look particularly good for you.
Tiny little gems of delight is what they are.
This whole disclosure thing seems a bit of a setup.
Well, Stephen Greer, there are a bunch of interesting characters in the whole UFO community, and Stephen Greer is easily one of the more interesting ones, because in May of 2001, note the year, this is a few months before 9/11, there was an event at the National Press Club in Washington.
Yeah.
And you can look it up, and there was a whole raft. There's probably about 10 or 15 former US, they were military guys, they were air traffic controllers, and every single one of them basically said, I have seen evidence of extraterrestrials. I have seen UAPs, I have seen them on radar, or I've actually seen them with my naked eye, or I was involved in an encounter with a UFO or UAP. And these guys all got up in front of the National Press Club and spoke their piece and said, I'm prepared to testify in front of Congress. And Stephen Greer is the one who organized that event. And he's also written loads of books, and he's got a website and TV shows and everything else. And he's actually gone a little bit woo, because he's convinced that we can kind of communicate with these aliens
through channeling or something like that.
Yeah, sort of. It's, I don't know, he loses me a bit when he starts going into all of that, but he's got these groups around the world that kind of get together, and supposedly they can call UFOs or some shit. I honestly don't understand.
Hey hi ya, hey hi ya, hey hi ya.
Yeah, maybe they do that. I don't know, but if anyone's interested in further research, then Stephen Greer is a good name to look out for.
Do you think they just pick up the phone? They're like, "Yo, bring down spaceship, come bro."
What about the Denver airport one?
Well, Denver Airport.
Denver Airport is an episode in itself, right?
No, but I'm not talking about Denver Airport. I'm talking about the alleged UFO that was hovering over Denver Airport and shut down all the traffic.
I've seen pictures of it.
And it wasn't just for 10 minutes. It was apparently there for hours.
Yeah, and it was seen by multiple people, and it was seen by pilots and
air traffic controllers. And
let me just go to Google Images, because and there's some really clear pictures that I wish I had thought of when I was putting my presentation together.
Do you know what? He's far more organised than us, though, with his presentation.
Yeah, but
Far more organised.
Well, what would you want us to do? Do you want us to do a presentation like this for the news?
No.
No, but the thing is that I'm doing like one show a month or something like that with you guys. So I have a lot more time to prepare. If I was doing multiple shows in a week, to do a full presentation for each one would be a full-time job. And the main reason I did it was just to organise all of the images that I just wanted to
And to
put
be
up.
fair, you can't rehearse what we do.
No,
You can't.
not at all. And I mean, I don't have any like written notes of stuff I want to talk about. All of that is just coming off the top of my head. But and I mean, I don't think your audience would want you to, because it's part of the fun of listening to you guys is it's like a weird pub conversation that you can't actually take part in, but you can. It's like you're sitting on another table and you're listening to these two interesting guys talking, and
our egos are so being stroked right now, John. Are you feeling it?
I'm feeling it.
I'm feeling it too. I mean, I
They give bona fide paranoics like myself a bad name.
Oh dear.
Thank you, Ed.
That's okay. I appreciate very much what you guys do.
And we appreciate you and your memes.
Well, if I make a few people laugh, then I'm happy. And I'm just basically trying to rebuild my social media presence, but not on Twitter. And I'm not going back to Twitter. Sasha will post a few things from time to time, mainly to tell people to get the hell off Twitter.
See, I think, right, and I know this is jumping off, but I actually think that is counterproductive, because we need our presence, not just, you know, me and John or us three, but people who want to give a different perspective, want people to think. We need our presence within those mainstream platforms, because if we simply shut ourselves off from them, we will lock ourselves into echo chambers and preach to the choir.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to interact. That I never really did on Twitter either, because I did months ago try and interact with people and try and in a friendly, nice way give them a bit better information than what they've got. And there's only so many times that I can put up with being told that they wish I was dead, or that they hope I
do you know
die.
what? And we've had it all. My address was doxed. My family was threatened. You know, we've had it all. But I still think personally that I will continue to shout into the ether on anywhere that will have us even for 5 minutes. Because if we can just make a few people think, we don't even have to make them agree, then we've done the right thing, I think.
I agree, and at the moment I'm still pissed off with Twitter.
I am. You know, me and John, for example, we were banned at the exact same time.
But Twitter's a different ballgame, because Twitter's shooting itself in the foot here, because it's becoming an echo chamber for the left.
It is, yeah. It's becoming the Gettr of the left, or the truth of the left.
There's no interaction on Twitter, or there's no interaction that's worthwhile on Twitter.
But they don't want interaction. It's their way or the highway. And
yeah, well, see, that engineer gave it away when he said, you know, we don't really care. We're a communist platform. We don't care about making money. We're a communist platform.
Yeah, he said that on Project Veritas. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched that one as well, and I thought it was fascinating insight into the kind of mindset of the people that work there. And it is an information gathering platform, and it's a way for them to generate metadata about what people are talking about, because they can seed an idea and then see how people react to it.
Yeah, it's governments use it left, right, and centre for this exact reason.
Absolutely, and it's I just think the thing with Twitter is that, because of when you have roving gangs of dickheads that are looking for any single possible thing that they can find in someone's profile to report them, then you end up having to be so careful with what you say that you're just turning into one of them anyway, because you can't disagree, because you only have to say something slightly in the wrong way and they jump on you.
Right, anyway, who is Nick
Right.
Pope? Controlled opposition? Adam
Yeah.
says in the chat he's seen Nick Pope. He gave a talk at Skeptics in the Pub in Leicester.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not rushing to judgment about him. I find him a fascinating character because he's quite I mean, he came out of the MOD to start with.
Yeah.
And he's very prominent in...
He's basically a PR guy.
He kind of is. He's the go-to UFO expert for mainstream TV shows and people like that. And I can't work out. That's why I put the question marks. I can't work out whether he's controlled opposition or not.
Well, I don't think there is any controlled opposition, because I think the whole thing is I think the whole thing's a setup by government anyway to hide their tech.
Yeah, and I mean, Nick, when the videos that I've seen him in, he asks good questions. He's just a bit, I don't know, maybe it's just his on-camera personality or something like that. But he's...
Dayman 30 says 200 people booed him in Leeds.
Oh.
Oh, Christ. Oh, dear, that poor bastard. I wouldn't like 200 people booing me.
That's a tough audience.
Right, and this is the final one. I put this one in. This is kind of just a sop to all of the people that will start screaming at me because I showed a globe. But it's just another interesting potential for a rabbit hole. And this is one of the ideas about the flat earth, is that shit's a lot bigger than we realize. And that maybe some of these...
Truman land in.
Don't know.
It could be.
Does that say the walls of Asgard?
Yeah, it had Asgard in it. That's why I chose this map when I was looking for them. And so this is one of the other theories about UFOs, is that for the flat earthers, it's basically somewhere these...
I saw people coming from outside.
That these UFOs could be coming from outside of the ice wall, as it were.
So we're in the
and I'd be interested again. I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated by flat Earth. I'm not convinced by any stretch of the imagination, but I like interesting things to think about that don't involve, like, the government trying to bloody murder me and all of this other shit, because there's a whole lot of stuff that it's because I'm also a big fan of Suspicious Observers, that channel I mentioned, and he posts...
Ben's pretty good on that, Ben Davidson.
Yeah, and I mean, he posts daily videos of snapshots of the sun, and like the electromagnetic output and the different waves and stuff, and it's... I don't know how that...
I tell you what, if we can do the icefall thing, right? I'm thinking here, if we ever get big enough as a channel to be making some money, we will buy a dirigible, and we will fly to the icefall.
You're not allowed to.
That's why I would buy a dirigible, John.
Doesn't matter. You're still not allowed to.
You're not going to get caught in a dirigible, John.
Yeah, you will. It goes really slow.
It goes really slow, but it's not really technologically advanced.
Shit you down.
So that's basically the last slide in the presentation. And as I said, I will post a link to this up on my blog after the show if people want to go, particularly for that the video of Philip Corso.
Slide 24 for those that are paying attention.
Yep. And also, I mean, some of the pictures are cool. People might want to go in and have a quick look. There was some text there about the Dogon. Oh, hang on. There was one thing we didn't do. Let me just share my screen again because we skipped.
Jump in there and steal Ed's work and purport it as your own.
Yes, you can. That's what people do often these days on the internet, isn't it, John?
We do it all the time, don't we?
Well, we just edit things, yeah.
I'm so used to it, but it's this. Yeah, we skip these because we've got the ancient alien guys, but then there's also the
aliens.
Hold
Vimanas.
on.
Oh, hang on.
Not going to do a
No,
George.
you can't
I'm
see
doing
them.
a Giorgio.
Your hair won't do that. Your hair's too fine.
Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Yes, the Vimana.
Yeah, which is I missed that bit. I don't know why, but the Indian legends of Vimanas, and I mean they describe how to build them, how to fly them. There's a lot of Indian.
Oh, there was a kind of, what was the thing about the Marines that are supposed to have found a cave in India and they went in and disappeared?
I haven't heard that one. I'll have to look it up.
Oh.
But there's a lot of, I mean, India's full of stuff like this, and I mean they've got the, what are they called, it's the Bhagavad Gita. It's one of these ancient Indian Sanskrit texts that describes wars between the gods and flying machines and
Nuclear wars, effectively.
yeah, absolutely. But then you've also got this.
Isn't there a big, what was it, the something flats in India that's like radioactive?
Adam, we did the Nazi Bell Die Glocke at the beginning of the show, actually.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that the Vimana looks a bit like the Die Glocke.
Yeah, but on a bigger scale.
And remember, he actually got the National Socialist Party's emblem, the swastika. That's sort of Indian in descent,
Yep.
isn't it?
There's loads of, I mean, there is a bunch of mystical stuff wrapped up in the Nazis. Sorry, go on. John.
Oh yeah.
Well, the Finnish Air Force, remember, was using it as its emblem up until 1991?
Yeah.
No, sorry, 2019, when they actually dropped it. The Finnish Air Force still had swastikas on their planes until 2019.
How many members of the Ukrainian public have still gotten tattooed on them to this day? I mean, what?
Yeah. And that was the Dogon. So it was just those Vimanas that we missed. Again, where did these ancient stories come from? And
yeah.
I mean, archaeologists and a lot of these supposedly bright scholars will just write them off as myths.
Yeah.
And say that our ancient ancestors didn't know what the hell they were talking about, and then just write it off. But there's so many of those stories that are very similar, and there's a lot of imagery,
awful lot of coincidences,
an awful lot of coincidences, and very similar. It's like very African-looking featured statues in South America.
Oh, the Olmecs.
Yeah, and contact between parts of the world that you would think was really unlikely, and yet they've got similar sorts of artifacts showing up.
There's Aboriginal DNA in South American natives in the south of Argentina.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, it's like Graham Hancock and the whole Chariots of the Gods thing.
Yeah,
and some of the ancient, like the properly ancient stuff that we don't. I mean, if there was a cataclysm 6,000 years ago, which is potentially where the flood stories come from, then, and that actually ties with solar cycles because it's 12,006. There's a big one every 12,000 and a little one every 6,000. And if there was some sort of cataclysm and there was an ancient civilization, then, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's.
You're saying we're due a big one.
Sorry, say it again.
You saying we're due a big one or a little one?
I think potentially we might be due a big one sometime between 2030 and 2050, based on what the Earth's magnetic field is doing. The other thing that I find quite interesting is that the timing of this potential solar event is in the 2030 to 2050 range. Yeah. And what else is happening between 2030 and 2050? Oh, the World Economic Forum is
listen, Ed, listen. Okay. It doesn't matter what we all think is going to happen because you will eat the bugs. You will be happy. You will eat the bugs.
They're going to put it. They're already putting that cricket protein in.
You know what, guys?
My work here is done. Have a nice day.
You will eat the bugs, John. I told you last night. You will eat the bugs. You have no choice.
They're not going to give us a bloody choice.
Do you know what? I just completely off topic. I had a lovely ribeye steak for dinner, medium rare.
Ribeye is such a good cut of meat.
Isn't it just? I was perusing Asda, and I was in I saw the discount cabinet. You know, the yellow sticker cabinet. £2.50 for a ribeye steak.
That's good.
I'm done. I don't know about you guys, but I'm all tuckered out.
Yes, I think we are reaching the logical conclusion to this show. And let me just say, having now been down this rabbit hole for an hour and 45 minutes, what we can conclude from this is that fucking we don't know what's true.
No, absolutely. I always end up with more questions every time I discover something new. Instead of actually answering the bloody question that I was trying to answer in the first place, I've now got an additional 7 or 8 questions.
John.
Yes.
Do we have a klaxon tonight?
What's your klaxon? I've always got a klaxon for you, my good man.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have enjoyed this trip down the rabbit hole with me, John, and our guest host once a month, Ed the Techie, then please consider propping us up a little bit, helping us continue, and going to patreon.com or indeed subscribestar.com/chasing descent on either, and consider helping us grow and expand and get better stuff. And you can do that by donating once a month from as little as £1. That's £1 a month. That's not £1 a day. That's not £1 a week. That is £1 a month, and that will hopefully accumulate and help us over time. You can donate more than £1 if you'd like, or if you do not in these hard times, if you can't even afford £1, then we understand, and we will continue to endeavour to make every show free. And we will ask you to just enjoy them.
And can I just add that if anybody
want to send blankets or water, just send your cash.
Yeah, and if anybody likes jigsaws, then edthetechie.tmail.com is my online store, and you can find some fun jigsaw puzzles and other merchandise that's got my artwork on it.
Go and buy his stuff.
Thank you very much for joining us, Ed. It's been illuminating. And as you said, it's probably left us with more questions than answers, but when you go down the rabbit hole, what else could you possibly expect?
Exactly, and it's the questions that drive us in the end. The answers tend to be fairly banal or non-existent.
But
thank
question.
you guys very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
I have one question for you, Ed. What rabbit hole should we go down next?
Well, I picked this one, so why don't you guys pick one, and I'll go with that.
I'll kick it to John.
To the moon.
You want to do moon landings? Okay, let's do the next one. Is the moon landings? Should we extend that to include moon landings and other NASA fuckery?
Yeah. Why not?
Because there's some other interesting stuff about doctored pictures in Antarctica and doctored pictures on Mars and
bubbles and James Webb Space Telescopes and
absolutely. And I mean, I'm no expert on the moon landing, so I'm going to have to do some research on that. And yeah, I look forward to it. Let's do that one.
So next month, August, we will go down the lunar hole.
Excellent.
So with that, John, I am going to see us all out. So because After Dark is supposed to be my show, John. It's supposed to be my show. But thank you, one and all, for joining us on this Ed the Techie exclusive episode of Chasing Descent After Dark. I have been your host, Ben. That has been your host, John, over there, and that has been Ed down there. Good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
And good night from me as well.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
That's all we've got time for this evening, so it's good night from me, and it's good night from him. Good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Stop playing with my bust!
Good night, everyone.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy.
You're a what?
A pianist.
Mwah! Good night, everybody.
You have been a delightful audience. Still. Good night. Thank you.
Oh, my bottom hurts. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Tim Bob.
Oh, I did love that hamster so. I took it into bed with me every night, you know.
Good night, everybody.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think I have to go now. I've been standing here for a very long time. I think the end of the show must have come and gone.
There you go. That's our solar system.
You forgot Uranus.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening. You've been very nice to work.
Good night, Tim Bob.
Good night, Tim Bob.